Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Um, I was waiting around for a few people to come in, but I also wanted to continue with the um, sound bowls. This is it's on YouTube, so I'm going to give recognition where recognition due. That was not my music, but that was by Chakra Vibrations. I frequently use, I'll say their channel because um, I don't know how the person identifies, right? But being respectful and mindful, um, I often use their bowls, and it helps ground me, helps get me in the place that I need to be in. And tonight's topic, if this is your first time, my name is Magoon, also go by B, and I'm an instrument for a spirit to use the spirit pleases. So you may see me operate in a multitude of gifts at any given moment in time. And that is because uh, that's how spirit chooses to engage with me and engage in me. And it's been that way for years. And I say that because there are times where people would often ask me about my awakenings, when things happened. And it all started for me with reading. Which brings me to tonight's topic. You are what you read. And I had originally a different topic, title, not topic, but title in mind. But whenever I sat down at my computer, that is what came to me. And I said, okay, so we're going to go with that. Excuse me. And it's important to know that you are what you read because just like eating, your mind is consuming the thoughts of the writer. And so it's very important for you to read books that are divinely appointed to you. I can suggest so many books, and I'm going to just showcase a few books that I have read and that I'm on a continual roll with reading, and I'll get into details with that. And then books that I have completed because they all introduce, I would say, that little itch that we have, that itch of wanting to know, that itch of knowledge that we want to incorporate in our lives. And it leads us down another road. And it's important to know because I love history. Me as a person, love history. I love research. I love looking back and understanding to move forward. And that's the thing. We have to know what happened in the past so that we can know what we're looking at when we are moving forward. Because if we don't, we will eventually begin to, I was going to say regurgitate, but not really regurgitate, but we will continue cycles that we should have been ended. A part of the cycles, repeat cycles, is not knowing when to finish the chapter, not knowing when to turn the page because you've learned that lesson. And I'm thinking in chapters, right? So that's just like you keep reading the first page, but you never go to the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and so forth and so on pages. And it's like you just keep reading the same page, and it's like, why are you stuck? What caused you to be stuck? And most of the time, it's from not comprehending, not comprehending properly. You've made up your mind on what the book would be about, which is why they say you can never judge a book by its cover. And it's so true because I've picked up thick book reads, and for my readers out there, you know what I mean. And I was shocked that one, it had a very plain cover, but it kept calling out to me. So I said, I've got to read this. And it was the most amazing book that I have read about a young guy who goes like on a fairy tale, outing. And it all took place within one day. But for us, it was days and months and years. And I love books like that, right? And I was still in college, I believe, maybe just getting out of undergrad whenever I read that book. But either way, I'm going to go ahead and dive into a few books in no particular order and just kind of show you what I'm reading. I will start off with this one though, because this is one of the books that I go to because I don't you I have not read it as a book to read, as a book uh just to get the knowledge and like, oh, okay, I've read that and done, now I can go to the next. No, I'm use this book as a as needed basis. I got this book whenever I first started my journey because I wanted to understand what exactly was I experiencing. And I actually, let me go back. So my awakening started when I'm going to say this too. Shout out to the Shift Network. If you know who they are amazing. They had a conference, a shamans conference. Oh gosh, this had to have been like 2021. And I it just stood out to me. So I said, let me go to this online conference. It was free. It was a week. It was a few hours, and if you signed up, what they said was that like if you couldn't attend the class, then you could go back and watch the videos. So that's what I did for most of the time. And the people began to talk about some of the things that they were doing, but they paid thousands upon thousands of dollars, excuse me, to go on retreats to learn how to tap into their clairvoyancy, to learn how to live peaceful living. Um, and I was taken aback because most of the things that they were talking about, I had done as a child. And so I said, okay, now I need to find a book to help me understand what were those experiences. And so I began to go to different places. However, I relied on my intuition to tell me. Um, I went to, gosh, I had to go to another town for my job, and they happened to have a bookstore. So during my lunch break, I went to the bookstore and looked around, and I was just looking around, and of course they had all the tarot cards, they had all the beautiful crystals, and all the things that you would need, right, to set up your own space, your own spiritual space. And I was like, oh, wow, oh, wow. And I was on my way out the door, and Spirit said, you did not look at the books. You glanced by them, but you didn't look at them. And I said, oh, okay. And then at that point, I wanted to understand the clairs because I understood that I operated in all of the clairs. And so, but I wanted to know more about them. I didn't want to just be able to do it without understanding it, right? That's the same as when a superhero understands that they have superpowers, but they don't know how to control it, right? It's the same thing. So I went back and I talked to the guy at the hi, the guy at the counter, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, do you have a book on the clairs?" And he suggested this: Spiritualism and Clairvoyance for Beginners. And like I said, I am no longer a beginner. However, I use this book as a as is base on a as is basis, right? Meaning if I had something, I'm going to go back to, I call it my little textbook. I'll go back to the textbook on the chapter that I need, and I will remind myself on why um, I was had this experience. because of now, it doesn't mean that spirit would not reveal it to me, but I've also understood and understand that spirit sometimes want us to also just experience life on this plane as the human being. We should never be too much of anything, and that's how we find unbalance. That's why when we are not awoke, we tend to do things to get us in trouble because we're not being spirit led. And when people are too focused on spirituality, they can actually go to a place. Um, I just heard a place of no return, but mentally, and that is why everybody in the mental health institutions are not, they don't have an actual mental health condition. Some of them tapped in too much and forgot their humanity side. And so that messes up with your humanistic side, right? How can you go around and you seeing um for a lack, I'm not going to say for a lack of better terms, but say you go around and all you seeing are demons and angels, and then you stop seeing people for people, but you start to see their inner demons. You start to see the light workers, and you approach them as such. And maybe the person doesn't know that they have a demon riding on their back and is being used by them, but then you murder them. Now you're being carried away because you were too spiritually minded. So this is why the importance of grounding yourself. Hi Ashley. um, no, I didn't just buy the book. This book I purchased. Gosh, this had to been like 2022 that I've had this book. Um, and I didn't. I just kind of opened it here and there because, and I tell people, and I was just talking to someone uh last week that I will purchase a book. Like Spirit would have me to purchase a book, but until it's time for me to read it, it does not come off the shelf. It's like Spirit's like, you need this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And I could have 6 books in my cart, and then I'm guided to read them as they come, right? And I enjoy it. For example, I have not read this one yet, but a friend of mine loaned me this. This is her book, and this is one of the self-help books, right? Um, and I'm going to say this: whenever you get a book, it should be pertaining to something about you, not just a suggested reader's book, right? Like you can, right? And there's nothing wrong with that if you do. However, you want to try to incorporate as many books that pertain to you in your life and lived experiences to help you get through some things. So she loaned me another book, and it was about timekeeping. And because I always would pressure myself like, oh, I should have had this done by this time and what's going on. And this book helped me to relax and realize that since I'm already tapped in spiritually, right? Things will happen when they need to happen. It doesn't mean that I don't try to put in a little effort, excuse me, and work. But it does mean that I have to be mindful that, and I love this example the most. They said, like, say, if you want to write a book, don't try to, and I am going to look up that book too, because that was an amazing book as well. But the author said, do not try to sit down for 3 hours to work on your book because it won't work that way. But if you say, I'm going to give myself at least an hour every day, every other day to work on my book, and you do that, you are slowly but surely writing your book, but in a way that's feasible for you. And he began to say, the author is amazing. He's a British author too. So I love my British authors and actors because their perspective on life is amazing. But he began to say that, oftentimes we put more pressure on ourselves than the actual task itself. And when we do that, that's when we become anxious. That's when we make the thing that we are wanting to do a burden. I'm trying to find this picture. There's the photos. Okay. Oh, you know what? It might have been in my other phone because this is a newer phone. So I will get that title and I will try to post it once I get that title. But the other book that she gave me was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And so I would say that me and her, she's like my older sister, just by a few years, and we will often talk about how much we take on of other people's task, right? And how this book will kind of put you in that space of, it's not my problem. Why should I worry about it, right? And it's to help. It's another, I guess you would say, task book, but a personalized task book. Because one thing, a self improvement book. Thank you, Spirit. Spirit corrected me. One thing about self improvement books is that when you get self improvement books, you're thinking that it's going to help you in your everyday, which it will. But on the spiritual side, Spirit is telling you to clear out some things. So maybe you don't know exactly what you're dealing with. So that is why you get the self help books, and then you realize, oh, maybe I should go to therapy. When this incident happened to me, I never really processed it the way that it should have been. I never really did the work or understood what work needed to be done. And in the process, while you're reading, you start to see yourself in a character or in the self help book, and you're like, okay, let me get my notes. I need a therapist. I need to make sure that I don't do this before I go to sleep. I need to count how many bottles of wine I buy every week. It makes you take an inventory on your life to move yourself forward. The next few books, I'll get into the magic side and the spiritual side, right? So, one of the books that I'm on a continual read also, I just slightly paused just because of my scholastics. But this one is called Fire Magic. And I took a gamble on this because, like, the way it looks like a fiction book of fiction, but the author is amazing. Josephine Winter. Shout out to you if you come across this, because this right here, this is what I needed. It's like hold on. It is like I thought it had the type of book that it is. It's a collective of stories, folklore, a collective of crystals, a collective of spells, poetry, songs, all pertaining to fire magic, right? And even breaks it down to which animals. And it's important because one of the last few episodes we talked about were animals. This was like maybe 2 weeks ago now. We talked about animals. We talked about lived experiences. We talk about dream interpretations and what they have in them. But sometimes we forget that some of these animals, some of these elements and colors, some of the symbolisms that we have in our dreams are connected to the elements. So it's important to understand that. And I have known since I was a child that I have been connected to fire like any other. Um, like really connected to fire. I grew up in the country, so my grandparents were used to burning wood outside or burning trash, and then of course when my mother and I we were in our house, she did the same thing. So it was sort of like that. Hey, we don't need this anymore. Go make a pile, and we're gonna burn these leaves. We're gonna burn these extra branches in the yard. So it was nothing to go gather these um, things and items and go make a fire, and I would sit there and I would watch how the fire would dance and just sit there, and my grandparents would say, don't get too close so you don't get burned, or don't get too close so you don't inhale the smoke. But I was never afraid. Never. It was almost like they say, a moth to a flame. I was drawn in. And I even, one of my very first spells as a kid was using fire. Did not realize I was using fire magic. I just it just came to me and I said, okay, well, we're gonna do this. And the thing happened the very next day. Um, so that kind of freaked me out. But whenever you, especially if you, I definitely want to talk to my elemental witches or my people that feel very connected to the elements. This author has one for every element. After I finish this, I do want to get water because that's my other element that I'm strongly connected to. And then I said eventually I might just go ahead and get the full series, just to understand, because whenever I was getting this book, all of a sudden I just started getting into plants. And we'll get into that a little more a little later. But I got heavily into plants. In fact, um, I have a garden right now. I have plants. I have like what, two, four, five plants behind me right now. um, Three of them are seedlings. I'm waiting for the sprouts to come up. And I said, I don't know why all of a sudden I'm just in the need in the fields to get real earthy, but okay, here we are. You get older and things start to change, right? The next is getting into the world of Ifa. So, there, I'm not going to say long story short. I'm going to give you the story. So, I have a friend named Chris, and Chris is a priest, a high priest in basically like the Haitian voodoo, but he's also a lot of things. And so I honestly can't remember how we met. That is the wildest thing. I honest to goodness cannot tell you how we met. But we started talking about spirituality, and he was the first person to tell me. He was like, "Yeah, you should look into Ifa," and I was like, "Yeah, I don't think that's for me." Where I was going with that is because I've known ever since I was a child that I've been more attuned to my indigenous native roots. And I knew that they did not practice Ifa. And so for me, and it's probably more so because I was raised by my mom's side of the family. And that is, we don't go to the powwows or anything. We don't do that. However, once I understood that that was our background, I started looking more into different cultures. The earth meant something else than just the earth. And mind you, I said I've been walking with spirit since I was a kid. So I was naturally attuned to nature. So now when you're talking about a whole nother practice that's in Africa, and I don't know my Africa roots, right? Most black people in America don't know their African ancestry unless you take the African ancestry DNA test. And I did last year. We're going to put a tab in that. So either way, I went to an ayahuasca ceremony in I want to say that was 2022. I want to say it was, yeah, it was November 2022. Ashley, you may remember me telling you about it. And one of the things that happened was while we were, I stayed awake the full 24 hours. I want to say that. So while everybody else, there were people that had fallen asleep and was, and then I took it all in. I stayed awake. But one of the things that happened, one of the last things they wanted us to do right before we closed, we had to lay back. We took a second dose, and I laid back, and all of a sudden I heard this loud, thundering voice. Knew nothing about Ifa. I had just heard about, a few Orishas. Of course, everybody, Oshun was on everybody's lips at that time because Beyonce had mentioned it, and so many other people were talking about it. And it was like, okay, so everybody knew. I was like, okay, but I didn't know who Oshun was. I just knew everybody was talking about it. Um, and this loud booming voice says, Brian, I've been calling you. And I said, ooh. But it was a man's voice. It was deep voice. It was Brian. I've been calling you. Who is this man? Why are you calling me? Who are you? I am Oshun. After Oshun says this, Oshun says, Yemaya, come forth. And I'm like, who is Yemaya? And all I heard was this sound of a woman. I will never forget this as long as I live because it was so loud. She was screaming. Yemaya was here. It was like Oshun was here, Yemaya was here, screaming in my ear as if she was giving birth. So the next day, after I went to sleep, I messaged Chris and I woke up and I said, hey, we need to talk. I said, Oshun and Yamayam visited me. What's that about? He was like, you don't know? I said, what's that about? I don't know them. I don't know them. Like, well, who are they? And I had to look them up because he was at work, so his text messages were coming in very slow, like the drip, 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 drip. And I said, I can't. So I looked and I said, oh, Oshun's a woman. Okay. And so I started reading things online, but of course, you need a good book. You need a good, credible source. And so I had seen these books online, and I said, whenever I find a bookstore that have them, I'm going to read them. So I have these in my catalog. I got these from my bookstore, um, Tanisha and Ashley. Y'all know which bookstore that is. And they were a good starter. It's almost like you getting a pamphlet for something for a tour. That's how I treat these. They don't go in as much of or in depth as much, but they give you enough to say, I need a little more. So that's what I did. I have one other book. I could not find it. I have not read this one yet. I've not read this one yet, but it is on my list of books to read by the end of this year. So I will read this. But there is another book that I have, and I did read all of that, and that was really good because it talks about, it gives the Orisha's prayers. It teach you more about the kola nuts and how it's used. Why it explains why you should go to a high priest and not just anybody. Don't let just anybody, and don't just don't. I will say it like this. The book tells you why you shouldn't look at the Orishas like the zodiac and see which ones you act like, because the Orishas choose you. You don't choose them. And even when you get ordained, the high priest, the Babalawo, let me say it the right way, will tell you who you've been assigned to. And sometimes they said that, there have been times where there's two Orishas with one person, and maybe even sometimes three, right? But the other thing is that the Orishas all have this connection, and I thought that was interesting in reading that, you should not put certain Orishas next to each other because they war. And in fact, Ashley, the previous co-host of the show, me and her was talking one day, and she began to talk about how she had this statue. It was like the collection of Orishas, and she just put them up. And she said she woke up, and it was like three were on the floor, and the rest were on the windowsill. And she was like, "Hold on now, like what's going on?" Like, and I said, "Child, they say there's a certain one who look. Be careful with who you place beside each other because they say that's what's gonna happen." So, excuse me. So, I cannot wait to dive into this. And one of the things that I did find out is that in Ifa is connected to the Yoruban culture in Nigeria. Now, I've known for years that I've had Nigerian ancestry, Nigerian, Cameroon, um, Botswana, well, people from Botswana, and just different places in Africa. But I definitely knew about the Nigerian and the Cameroon side for years. So I did a deep dive after dreams and a deep dive. I understood that my father's side was from the Igbo tribe. And so I said, okay, well, I need to know where my mom's side of the family is because we have so much. Even 23andMe told me that my mother's side of the family had ancestry from Thailand. And I said, ooh, interesting. I really need to understand where in Africa my mom came from, my mom's side of the family came from. So I did go to the African ancestry group, and I'm starting to see your comments now. So I went to the group, got it done. My results came back. My mother's side of the family, all of the women lineage of my mother's side of the family has come from Yoruba. And I said this explains a lot because the women in my family are highly gifted in spirituality, whether they accept it or not. Just about all, well, I'm not going to say all. My mother and at least two aunts have sight gifts or knowing gifts. One of my the female cousins, some of them have sight gifts. There's one cousin. At this point, they're my third cousins. Let me just say it that way. My cousin's grandchildren. There we go. Um, there's one, two of her grandkids, a daughter, a granddaughter, and a grandson that have sight gifts. And I said, okay, this is really high in our family, and this will explain that. Even my grandfather was a seer. So there's something on that lineage as well. So tapping in, being a seer is not nothing new to my bloodline. And the fact that I have seers on both sides of my family, I, I'm right there in the crossroads. I was chosen for this time. And so whenever you see these things, you see these images, it's great to respond right then and there because spirit is trying to get your attention. For those, if this is your first time watching or will watch in the future, I was raised in the church. I'm a PK down. Grandparents are preachers. Great grandparents are teachers. Great grandparents are preachers. And this is on my father's side. And so being in this space was hard for me, especially because I knew how spirit talked to me and dealt with me. Like I stayed as a kid, I stayed in the book of songs, could not tell you why. I just loved the book of songs. Um, and this lady gave me a prophecy one day, and she said, God wants you to go to read the book of songs. Like you stop reading the book of songs. And I still turn to it, but I didn't read it like I used to as a kid. I'm getting back to that though. It's not time for me. I am getting back to that. Remember, I said with reading, it comes time, especially with me. There's a timing component. But I'm sharing this because there was a point in time, and this was around 2014, between 2014 and 2017. I had an experience where I was walking and I heard Melchizedek. And I said, Melchizedek, what is Melchizedek? And I thought I was just hearing stuff. And I looked it up, and apparently it was a name that was written in the Bible. So I went to the Bible and went to the scriptures and read all about Melchizedek. And basically, it is a spiritual order where Jesus sits at the throne. And at this point in the Bible, this is the Old Testament, or what was placed in the Old Testament, right? And I'm like, okay, so Jesus was a time traveler? Because how could he set up a throne and a kingdom and he's the ruler and then come back in the New Testament as a baby? Just going to leave that there. But either way, it helped me to understand that there was a higher spiritual order of things. And that has also, I would say, over the last few years, with trying to understand this space in spirituality, while taking that religious cloak off, has helped me to understand that religious order. I mean, not that religious, but that spiritual order even more, because there is an order in the realms of spirit. I don't know why I'm going here because this was not on my list, but here we are. But that is some of the things that we must understand. Sometimes you're not going to have a book on it, but because of the different books that spirit connects you to and guides you to, you will begin to put the pieces together to see certain things for yourself. And I think a lot of people misunderstand. Like, a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to read a book. I don't have time to read a book." But you have to create the space. You have to create the time in order to really get what spirit is trying to tell you. Um, so, like I said earlier, I'm gonna go to my next book. This is one of two books that I have on this topic, but once I started getting heavy and heavy and heavy and heavy into the realm of the earth and wanting to plant and wanting to become what some people call a kitchen witch, um, which I have created a few recipes from some people from the other side. I'm like, they like, just add this, just add this. I want you to put this in it and I'm like, okay. And it's amazing. I had a cousin that was a chef. And so he gave me one recipe and I said, oh no, I'm writing this down. And I wrote it down. I said, you're not about to do this to me. And it's so good because it had fresh ginger in it. But either way, the apothecary. So I had another book from Amazon, and just give me a few seconds. I'll go get it really quickly because it's in the next room. It's not too far. Okay. The Encyclopedia of Herbal Medicine. So I was reading this book because another thing that happened in the during the ayahuasca ceremony is that my ancestors began to talk to me about plants and herbs. And at the time I was like, okay, like, I know you was gardener, like most of you were gardeners. Some of you were slaves, so you had to be in the earth. So I get that. And I thought that that's what they were telling me. No, they wanted me to do some further stuff. So I saw this book, I got it, and it is amazing. It tells you how to make different um, balms, ointments, teas, tinctures, the works. Gives you how much of the product, like the proper measurement, so you can make it so it's not too potent. I also took a course online, so I have, yes, using herbs for medicine is amazing. I actually took a course, so I am certified to do these things afterwards, and I have access to those books and can make a few other things. Um, and my teacher talked about a lot of. She gave a lot of menstrual cures, so definitely look into the herbs, ladies. Yes, and the interesting thing. So someone in the chat actually said that she loves using herbs for medicine and loves fire too. Well, the thing about that as well is you have to use fire in a lot of these things, and a lot of potions and spells, and what people call potions and spells, right? But even with the herbal medicines, fire is included with most of them, right? Because you have to heat it. And a lot of people, this book talks about it. Whatever is a heat source, there's still a source of fire, even if it's electric. It's a representation of fire. So um, there was one part in the book where they say if you are into herbs, you will notice magically the difference between using the stove top and using an open fire. So I thought that that was interesting. But she said like you will still get the same results, but you will see that you can almost see the difference between the two. And then going back to this book, so 2 years ago, my sister got this book for my niece, my mom, and my brother-in-law because they were all talking about making different herbs and teas for cleansing and health. But now, mind you, my mom has always been this lady because she takes herbal medications, um, or herbal vitamins, I should say, over medications, and she's always been that way. And she's outlived a lot of people that's had certain types of ailments and diseases. Like my mom was diagnosed with lupus when I was born, and that's been over 40 years now. And because of how she's taken care of herself, a lot of the things that they said that she wouldn't be able to do, she has done. And it's because of herbal medicines. And I'm not just talking about lupus. I mean, like my mom has had like a lot of ailments and things that happen. But this apothecary, I love it because it tells you exactly how to do it for each plant. The difference with the first one is that it gives you a list of the plants and their medicinal usage and how you can make it, but then it tells you how to make either the ointment, the tea, or the tincture in the back of the book. And there's also a list of websites, so that was helpful too. But for this one is like, okay, if you like this one says hot toddy, it tells you what it's good for. It gives you the ingredients. It tells you the notes. It tells you how to make it so that you can most people use it for to clear out phlegm right during the winter time. So that's why I got this book, because I'm like, this can help me aid in the other book, especially if I want to make a tea. And then it also put me in the mind of I need to be in a space where I can collect natural herbs out of the earth. So yeah. So now I'm going to get into some other books. So we have gone over self-help books, spirituality books. I guess you would say natural magic books, shamanistic books. Like I said, I come from an indigenous line, so I'm sure we had several shamans in our lineage, right? And they would be the ones that would use the herbs and things. But because of modern day, well, I'll say modern day, but because of practices that happened in the past that has carried over, those traditions were lost. And this brings me to my next topic. Um, and this is the political space. And and we're going to eventually have political talks because everything that we're seeing in the country right now is on purpose. It's intended for a few things. And this, I'll just go ahead. This is a book that was written by my dean, the the political determinants of health, and it's important for people to read books like these. Now, I am a public health major, so I would have when I saw this book, I said, "Oh, I have to get this book." He turned around and gave it to us for free. Again, when you are being directly aligned, things will come to you for free. And the thing about this book is it talks about how the political space is connected and fashioned and formed in such a way where it determines what our health can look like. And one of the things that I recognized early on in my career of public health is that everything, every little thing, no matter how minute you think it is, plays a part in our health. That is important to know because when spirit is trying to make you aware of something, spirit will have someone have a divine aha moment and will write instructional books to reach out to the masses. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to get into politics." But the thing is, spirit never wants us to be in bondage. The way that people get in bondage is by silencing their own voices, especially when you know the historical factors of why people silence other voices, right? For total power, for total control. When spirit has someone to write books, liberating books like that, it is to free the person's mind because when you've been taught a thing a certain way, like mine, okay, for example, I was raised in the church. All I knew was the church. That was my spiritual space. Although even growing up, I had friends who practiced all kinds of things. Like I had friends that was practicing Wicca, friends that were Muslim, friends that were Jehovah's Witness. And although they're connected to the church, they have a different aspect of the church. Even knew people that were Seventh Day Adventists, right? And even they practice spirituality differently. The thing about it is, whenever I was being pushed out of the religious space that I had been growing up, it was a tussle a little bit because it was like, you sure you want me to go here? Because this is not how they raised me. This isn't how I was taught. And so when you think about it, that is you being confined to a certain box. And I have always said, even as a child, don't place me in a box. And so when I realized that I had been keeping God in a box and God was so much bigger than what I was taught, I began to explore more. And it opened my eyes to see how God actually works, how spirit actually works. It allowed me to see that, and somebody just asked me this Sunday. The question posed to me was, do you believe in the Bible or science? And I said both, because you can't look at one without the other. When you look at both of them together, you get the full picture, you get the full spread. It's like you saying you're going to sit down and eat a meal, but I only have a spoon and I got steak, I got salad on my plate. I got all the things that I need to use a fork. My dessert is coming later and I can use my spoon easily. But for right now, how I'm going to eat this steak and this salad with this spoon, I need the fork. And then when you get the fork, you're like, okay, now I can eat everything together, right? When you get into the spiritual space, you have to take the spiritual books that spirit gives to you, but you also have to take the natural books, because in it, these authors have been divinely inspired to write these things, these instructions, this new way of looking. This is why the P in the PhD is philosophy. They have philosophized. They have been divinely inspired to add something new to what has already been studied. That is why that the PhD, the doctoral level studies, is a sacred space. It's not just an academic space. Now there are some people who do treat it like that, right? But it is a sacred space that I think a lot of people kind of miss. But whenever they write these books, if it's not divinely inspired, it's not going to go anywhere. If it's been divinely inspired, it's going to open the mind, because spirit is all about freedom. Spirit flows freely. So anything that it creates a bondage for somebody, spirit is going to create an avenue for that person to get out. It's going to create a space for that person to move freely. And the reason that is important in the spiritual realm is because when you are bound by stuff, spirit cannot use you, spirit cannot talk to you, spirit cannot guide you the way you need to be guided. But when you are free, when you are liberated, spirit is like, okay, I need you to turn left. And you're like, okay, I'll turn left. I need you to get out your car and I need you to walk 20 feet. Okay, I can do that. But when you're bound, you're just like, I don't know why all of a sudden I just feel like I need to turn left, but you know what? That's not where I'm going. I'm going home, but I'm gonna keep straight. And then you end up in traffic, backed up traffic. And now you're frustrated. You become anxious. And the whole time that could have been avoided, but you were thinking out of your mind that has been locked up, blocked, stuffed, however you want to put it. And so this wasn't on my list, but I had to read a few cases out of this. Health law. This is one of my textbooks. But these things help you to understand what has happened in the past, what has been developed, how has an evil thought took form and in shape and has shaped someone's mind to manipulate and control others. And then when somebody writes a book to show you this is exactly what you're looking at, but I'm going to show you the fine details so you can see all the doors, the windows, the keys, and what, as in this space they call them actors, but what key players are there in place. When someone exposes this, they put it in a book because it can reach massive amounts of people. They put them in books, going back to the apothecary, because traditions were lost. That verbal tradition was lost because there was rules that said you can no longer practice because that is dark magic. That is evilness. That is not of God. And then this book tells you, oh, well, they did that because that was a form of control. They wanted to control these people. They wanted them to believe that they were not free. They wanted them to believe that they were not called by a spirit, that they could not be used divinely. And when you can make someone believe that they're not those things, they belittle themselves. They shut themselves off away from spirit. So spirit then has to come back and liberate the people. And I just heard by any means necessary. And in this context, by any text necessary. And so it's very important that we dive ourselves into multiple and different types of books. I'm even every now and then I'll read a fiction book just to break up the monotony of all this information overload because it can become overwhelming. Shout out to Tanisha. I'm listening to Brandy. And Brandy's book is amazing. Those not biology, bibliography books are amazing because they take you inside of the author and you're looking at a different perspective, right? I know a few years ago we were talking about like the Diddy trials and every that space, right? The Hollywood space. And that Hollywood space looks one way to us that's not in it. But when you're in it and then they write a book to expose it, it's like, ooh. So that's what happened. Um, like for example, earlier today, I was on the chapter where she begins to talk about immature and the real reason why homie had the patch on his eye. And I said, ooh, I was like, I had to grab my chest. And it's because we never know what is happening until somebody exposes it. And when people expose the truth, then it's like, okay, moving forward, this is what we know what to look out for. How many times have we heard like the children that grew up in the industry, how they went through certain things? And so now the children that's coming up now, oh, no, 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 no. These parents are going to be more protective of their children, knowing what they know now. No, wherever my child goes, I'm going to go. Hmm. You can be the manager, but I'm going to be the manager too. Like we're not about to have this. And as strict as Joe was on Michael, he did instill a certain ethic point in all of them, especially Michael. And because of his experiences, he was able to do things for children, right? And I'm just going to leave it at that. But yes, so it's important to expose yourself to as many things as possible in this season if you haven't already. And I'm even going to go ahead and say, ask the chat, what types of books are you reading? And, you know, just, I guess, give like one or two sentences about the book if you would like, so I can share it with those who may not be able to read the chat. And while they do that, I'm going to pull some cards. Tonight's general reading is going to be on what type of books should some of the viewers be reading. Okay, so Tanisha says she's finishing up Brandy. I'm reading a book about consciousness and going beyond the story layer. Oh, I love that. I love those type of books. And I love those type of books because they take you to that deeper space. And what's funny is I was just about to say, even what is it, the Dark Night of the Soul books, if you can find any of those. I think I really started listening to Audible when my relationship was ending in 2019. And I began to look at certain books. Like I looked at books on, what is it, on narcissists, on being gaslit and what that looked like and what that meant. And when I realized multiple people had been gaslighting me all my life, it helped liberate me out of that dark space. And that was one of the things a lot of people would say, um, oh, but you just got out of a relationship. Are you sure you're ready for a new relationship? And I'm like, y'all don't understand. I was doing the work. I believe in doing the work while I'm in it, not sulk in it for months and years and then say, oh, I should probably heal myself from this. No, I have to heal it right then and there. And maybe that's because I am a healer. So, healing comes naturally to me. There's one more um, card that's coming out. It's like the deck is like, nope. Okay, let me go through these first and then it'll come out. But the first one, Seven of Swords, the Dark Night of the Soul is what I got out of this. Um, Highlighting those darkened areas that boggle your mind, that makes you think, that makes you doubt yourself is what I'm getting. Um, that puts you in that mischievous energy, right? When you get those type of self-help books, like I just stated, like you get to the root of the problem. It allows you to go to that very first instance where you felt that thing, that emotion, that thought, that trigger, and it allows you to expose it for you so that you can address it or address the person. It's never too late to confront somebody about what they did to you, because what that does is you acknowledge it. You determine that you're taking your power back. You acknowledge it. You're telling that person, look, I know what you did to me, but I'm not going to treat you like you treated me. I choose peace, right? And when you let that go, now that guilt falls onto them. And either they're going to apologize or they're going to try to live with that guilt. But you've taken your power back and you're no longer living under that rule of thumb. And then you realize the other areas in your life where that person had control because you had never let it go until that point. The next one is the High Priestess. So, books about elevating your mind. And one thing about it is you can't elevate your mind if you have not done the work for this. You can't swim up if you still got an anchor tied to your foot. If you have an anchor tied to your foot, you will not be able to swim to the surface. So, for those of you who have to do the step by step, do the step by step. This next one is the Wheel of Fortune, and I love this because this actually teaches you how to balance, right? So after you've gotten rid of the darkness and after you have elevated yourself, you now have to find balance in your life. And these books are like those self-help books, sort of like this title right here, right? It helps you to find the balance, right? Because after you already know what to look for, now you have to realize, okay, so how long am I carrying this? Am I still um using the same patterns to do the same things that's going to hold me back, right? Then the Hierophant, spiritual elevation. After you find that balance, this is that balance is almost going to be like hand in hand really with the Hierophant card, because after you find balance, then you're going to find that spiritual elevation. So after you have elevated your mind, and you found the balance between mind, body, and spirit, right? Then you start to elevate higher in your calling spiritually. Then you start to see the how you manifest, and the universe is like working towards you and bringing those things that you need done. And the last is the Two of Swords. This this isn't really a book per se, but this is letting you know that after you have read those types of books, you'll be able to make better decisions. You no longer have to struggle to figure out, am I making the right choice? Did I say the right thing? Did I make the right move? You will no longer have to question yourself because you have already done the work. Man, and that's exactly why spirit. Um, yeah, Five of Pentacles is at the bottom of the deck because you're no longer going to feel defeated. You're going to say, I have the key. Hold on. There we go. I have the keys of knowledge. I know what I have to do to get where I need to go to be successful. Because in this balance card, that's when you're going to start to find the physical success in life. That's when you're going to start to see, you know how like they said the get rich quick type of books. Like you're not going to need that because where you find the balance, the resources and the money is going to start coming in anyway. Now I'm gonna see if this card is going to come out. There's still one more card that's going to come out. Oh, there we go. Oh, this wanted to come out. The Page of Cups. This is when you start to experience the love, whether that is in industry, whether that's in your personal relationships, whether that's in a uh, familial friendship, or I always forget this word, or platonic relationship, right? That's when these things start to happen for you. Like, and I have seen some books, some people read how to snag the love of your life, or how to get what is it, how to get your um oh gosh, I wish the other Ashley said, because she would know what I'm talking about. It's not soulmate. What's the other person that like your soulmate but they're not your soulmate? Twin flame. There we go. Thank you, spirit. Because I've actually saw some books and it was like how to catch your twin flame, and I was like, no. Why would I want to read a book about that? Especially when you start to understand these things, right? It's like, why would I want to attract my twin flame? No, that's a seesaw type of relationship. I don't want that in my life. But it's like you don't have to read those type of books because you'll make the right type of decisions, and the right type of love is coming to you. The right type of presentations are going to come to you. That's what I'm getting out of this Page of Cups here. And that is all I have, collective. Any thoughts? Any comments? Okay. Everybody's good. I just wanted to check. But thank you all again for tuning in. I know it's late over there, so I I will close out the show. But please join us again next Tuesday at 11:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10:11 Central Standard Time and 8:11 Pacific Standard Time to catch Cards and Conversations with yours truly, Magoon. And you all have a good night. And yes, Ashley, that is a good stack of books.